So now may we welcome Stephanie Zhao to the stage. Oh, no. She's a pre-recorded presentation, and she's going to be talking about neck weakness in MND and ALS, an investigation on the impact of neck weakness on walking ability.
Hi, my name is Steph. I'm a physiotherapist working at the MND Specialist Service at Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem. Before I start, I just want to thank MNDA Victoria for funding our study and Monash University for helping us with the data analysis. My talk today focuses on neck weakness in MND and its impact on walking ability. First of all, what does neck weakness look like in MND? Essentially, it's weakness in the neck muscles, resulting in the head falling forward and not to the side. This impact of muscle weakness is more prominent in an upright position against gravity. What you're seeing in this photo is Bernie who has MND in a standing position. The red axis here is the axis of the cervical spine. The blue axis here is where the center of gravity would normally fall in a neutral spine. Notice the distance between the two arrows. This distance represents the change of a forward head position as a result of neck muscle weakness. What you're about to see is Bernie's walking video. I want you to pay attention to Bernie's posture and alignment when he's turning. Here, his head is dropped forward, causing the visual field to shift downwards. His torso is leaning backwards, and hips and pelvis are tilted backwards to compensate for the head drop. From our clinical observation, changes in walking associated with neck weakness often have an impact on walking ability. However, there's no study today exploring how walking ability changes as MND progresses, or how neck weakness impacts on it. Why is neck weakness important and how significant it is? My colleagues presented at previous conferences on key findings of other parts of our study. My talk today is part of the series of our study findings. The prevalence of neck weakness in the total cohort is around 40%, much higher than previously documented. Onset of neck weakness symptoms is seen at around 2 years from initial symptom onset. Bear this in mind, as you will see that our study shows fairly similar and consistent findings around this time frame. Knowing there is a gap in the current literature and what we often observe in practice, this led to our study, which is a retrospective observational study. We went back into our medical records and extracting data. We screened over 500 medical records and approximately 360 participants were recruited. They are then divided into two groups, those who has got neck weakness and those who doesn't. And data was collected and analyzed. These are our study aims: to understand the influence of neck weakness in walking ability, to explore the variability between phenotypes in walking ability. Lastly, to explore the relationship between phenotypes and neck weakness in walking ability. Our study focused on three aspects of walking ability. Firstly, walking distance, then walking assistance required. And the third aspect is when participants become wheelchair bound. Slide is a summary of the characteristics of our study cohort. The key message here is our study cohort is a representation of the general MND population in Australia. Comparing the gender and the mean age of the neck weakness cohort and the entire study cohort, again, we don't really see any difference in the two groups. The first aspect is walking distance. Often, walking distance is the first to be affected as walking ability declines. The milestone our study focused on is when participants become housebound. Mobility assessment was carried out at the first assessment time point and subsequently to track changes in the three aspects of walking ability. Participants who were initially able to walk beyond their home from the first assessment time point and become housebound subsequently were identified. Once identified, the time frame to first occasion of becoming housebound was noted. 178 participants fit into this category. 94 did not experience neck weakness and 84 did experience neck weakness. The mean time to becoming housebound for those with no neck weakness was 33 months. The mean time to become housebound for those with neck weakness was 25 months. There was a statistical difference in the time to become housebound in the two groups. Participants with neck weakness become housebound 8 months earlier compared to the ones without neck weakness. This is a significant amount of difference for MND people with a short survival. Was there any variability between the different phenotypes? Each phenotype is represented on the horizontal axis. The median time to become housebound is represented in red in months. There's no significant difference between bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset, but there is a statistical significant difference between cervical, lumbar, bulbar versus flower or PLS phenotype. The second aspect is level of assistance required for walking. As walking ability continues to deteriorate, some participants lost their independent walking and required some level of assistance. The milestone we focus on is at what point the participants lost their independent walking. From the mobility assessment, participants who were initially independently walking on first assessment time point and subsequently required any level of assistance with walking were identified. Once identified, time to the first evidence of loss of independent walking was recorded. 188 participants were identified with loss of independent walking in our study period. 97 did not experience neck weakness, and 91 did experience neck weakness. The mean time to loss of independent walking for those without neck weakness was 33 months. The mean time to loss of independent walking for those with neck weakness was 26 months. There was a statistical significance in the time to loss of independent walking in the two groups, with those with neck weakness taking a significant shorter time, around 7 months, to lose independent walking. How about variability between phenotypes? Each phenotype is represented on the horizontal axis. The median time to loss of independent walking is similar for bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset, just over 2 years. There's no difference between cervical, lumbar, or bulbar onset, but there is a statistical significant difference between cervical, bulbar, and lumbar onset versus flower limb or PLS. From the previous two slides, both phenotype and neck weakness have demonstrated an effect on loss of independent walking. To investigate the impact of each variable, Cox proportion hazard model is deployed. The estimated hazard ratio, which are risk factors or contributors of loss of independent walking, in this case, are listed in the table. After adjusting for age, sex, and phenotype, participants with neck weakness are nearly twice as likely to lose independent walking as those without neck weakness. Slalom and PLS phenotype are around 70% less likely to lose independent walking compared to bulbar onset after controlling for other risk factors. The third aspect is at what point wheelchair is required. As mobility further declines, some participants become wheelchair bound. The milestone we focus on is the time frame for the first occasion when participants become wheelchair bound. Based on the mobility assessment, participants who become wheelchair bound after first assessment time point were identified. Time frame to first occasion of wheelchair bound was recorded. 146 participants become wheelchair bound. 75 had neck weakness. The median time to wheelchair bound was 31 months. 71 did not have neck weakness. The median time to wheelchair bound for this group was 35 months. There was no statistical difference between the months to wheelchair bound for those two groups. Bear in mind that some participants are still early in their MND progression. Their walking deterioration and wheelchair need is yet to unfold. Looking at variability between phenotypes, all participants become wheelchair bound are represented in red in the graph and distributed in each phenotype. Blue is participants who are non-wheelchair bound. Portion of people who are wheelchair bound, according to phenotype, range from 24%, those with bulbar onset, which is the lowest, to 61%, those with bulbar onset, which is the highest. There is further variability between phenotypes in the time to wheelchair bound. Each phenotype is represented on the horizontal axis. Flower limb can be ignored here due to the very small sample of it. The median time to become wheelchair bound is similar for bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset, between 2 to 3 years. There is no difference between bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset, but there is a statistical significant difference between bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset versus PLS. To investigate the impact on each variable on becoming wheelchair bound, Cox proportional hazard model is deployed. The estimated hazard ratios or risk factors for becoming wheelchair bound are listed in the table. Only MND phenotypes and the presence of neck weakness were significant risk factors for becoming wheelchair bound. After adjustment for phenotype, participants with neck weakness are nearly 3 times as likely to those without neck weakness to become wheelchair bound. Lumbar phenotype was the only phenotype that significantly predicted the likelihood of becoming wheelchair bound after accounting for the presence of neck weakness. Lumbar onset is 2.5 times as likely to become wheelchair bound compared to bulbar onset. In summary, our key findings are neck weakness reduced community walking and independent walking time. Participants with neck weakness become housebound 8 months earlier compared to the ones without neck weakness. Participants with neck weakness lost their independent walking 7 months earlier compared to the ones without neck weakness. There is significant variability in all aspects of walking ability between phenotypes. The median time to become housebound and lose independent walking for bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset is around 2 years and much longer for PLS and flower limb. The median time to become wheelchair bound for bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset is between 2 to 3 years and much longer for PLS. Portion of people becoming wheelchair bound according to phenotype ranged from 24% bulbar onset to 61% lumbar onset. Neck weakness is a risk factor for mobility deterioration. Participants with neck weakness are twice as likely to require assistance to walk, 3 times to become wheelchair-bound. Flower limb and PLS phenotypes are 70% less likely to require assistance to walk compared to bulbar, cervical, and lumbar onset, and is 2.5 times as likely to become wheelchair-bound compared to bulbar onset. What does these findings mean to our clinical practice? They provide a better understanding of factors impacting on walking ability and timeframe of key changes in walking deterioration. These findings can be used as part of the education and starting an early conversation with patient and the family on what to expect in the future mobility changes and timeframes for those changes to take place. Often, patient and family find it difficult to find the information to help understanding on what to expect and prepare them for the future changes, both mentally and physically. Clinicians can guide patient and family with equipment planning, selection, make important lifestyle decisions in anticipation of significant mobility deteriorations instead of crisis management. The limitations of our study. The biggest limitation is our study is collected retrospectively. Our data is as accurate as our documentation. It's a single-center study, which means that our cohort could be different to other populations. Some of our participants are still living through the progression and not yet showing any changes in their walking ability. Lastly, some of the stat analysis is based on the assumption that participants would continue their disease progression in a steady rate, and we don't fully know whether that holds for all participants. Moving forward, we're going to analyze data on mobility progression and get aid to use neck weakness support strategies and mobility status, respiratory function, and neck weakness to explore the relationship between them. Lastly, I want to bring this presentation back to Bryony, who you saw in the first couple of slides. This is Cradle Mountain, a beautiful place in Tasmania in Australia. Bryony went to Cradle Mountain with his family in November, as it is in his bucket list to travel. Bryony made this trip despite his neck weakness, walking deterioration, and needing to use a wheelchair at times. Bryony and all other people with MND, they are the reasons that we want to continue with our work to address the current gap in our knowledge and provide better care until the day there is a cure. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that really interesting insight into your study. I find in our clinic, people are amazingly inventive in the way they the contraptions and things they develop in order to keep their heads up. In your study, did you look at collars and neck supports in any way?
Yes, we definitely looked at different options or aids that people are using to support their neck weakness. That will be a later part of our research finding. We've got the data, but we just have not been able to put it together for this presentation, but that is something that we're hoping to do in the next part of our study or in the future presentations.
Lovely, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Stephanie? We have a question.
Did any of the patients use a neck support before they needed a wheelchair?
Definitely. So again, it's something that we're very keen to, I guess, put some data around to show what sort of options and how do people progress in the aids that they use to support their neck weakness. But to specifically answer your questions, definitely neck collars or a range of different neck collars are things that people generally use before they get to the point of needing a wheelchair.
There's 2 questions in the chat, please. First one is, did you look into solutions? How can we delay this to happen? Any things we can practice to delay this?
So thank you for the questions. It's not in part of our study aims to look at how do you mean delayed in people developing the symptoms of head drop and neck weakness? Was that your questions?
The question was, is there anything they can do to delay neck drop?
That wasn't something that we looked at in part of this study, but I think it would be also, we probably more looked at how do we manage the symptoms rather than what are some of the things that we can do to prevent the symptoms. Because I think right now we just don't understand enough of even the symptoms. But I think that could be potentially another study or something else that we look at in the future.
Second virtual question is, at what point in the disease progression do you recommend head and neck collars for people with ALS who are still mobile?
I would love to be able to answer that. And in fact, that's part of the our entire study that we will be looking at people with different mobility status as they change, what sort of neck weakness support strategies and aids they will be using. But from just generally our clinical observations, depending each individual is a little bit different depending on their phenotypes and also the mobility and symptoms. We found that it varies with different individuals, but one of the aim of the study would be to look at whether there is a trend that we can collect from our data to say that people who are, at certain stage of mobility, there is more people are using soft collar or rigid collar or even wheelchair. So that's something that we are hoping to extract from our future, from our data in the future.
Another virtual question from Roderick, a person with ALS. The Snuggle is a memory foam and desired for planes. I'm wondering if you tried anything like this?
Yeah, so we definitely, I'm thinking about Snuggle is like a travel pillow. Is that what we are referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely, from our observation, again, in our service, people early on generally use a range of sort of soft collars and travel pillow. And it's generally more comfortable and people tolerate it better. So that's definitely one of the options that we noticed. And also we presented this in our previous conference presentation, that soft neck collar. It's probably one of the most popular neck support strategies for people.
Thank you. I think we have one final question.
It's kind of a 2-part question. Did you look at falls at all? And if you did you see falls correlate with that change in independence with walking?
That's a very, very good question. To answer your questions, that wasn't one of the outcome measure, or that wasn't one of the measure that we looked at. Again, I think our study probably looked at more sort of explore the prevalence of the of neck weakness in people with MND, and also more of the support strategies in place. But falls could be something else that we would want to explore, whether there is a relationship between falls and neck weakness in future. But that wasn't part of our study, but that was a very good point. Thank you.
Stephanie, thank you very much.